Is there any scourge worse than hunger? Probably not, especially from the perspective of the hungry person, who is damn near ubiquitous. That is, existing everywhere. Yes, even here. And since we're here, the best place for us to begin to look for solutions is here. Specifically, here, West Louisville and East Downtown, cited by the Community Farmers Alliance as food deserts, or great swaths of urban sprawl that contain no outlets for residents to access fresh, healthy, affordable foods. In our quest to industrialize, privatize, urbanize, and profit, what have we forsaken? Could it be that something so simple and essential as the food we consume has been overlooked in the scramble for bigger, better, more? I present empirical and testimonial evidence in the affirmative. My block exhibits several of the features described in the Bridging the Divide report. There is no supermarket or farmer's market nearby where residents can purchase fresh, healthy foods, although there used to be. The only places to eat now are Indies and Long John Silver's, both specialize in greasy, fat-laden fast food, hardly an ideal source of daily sustenance. There is also a Chicken King, a Chinese fast food place, and a BP gas station a little farther down Broadway, offering much of the same fare. Residents who don't own cars are left dependent on the stores nearest them for food purchases. In the present state of affairs, those residents tend to patronize these establishments, as well as the Oak Street convenience store a few blocks to the south. But this is all their green food. To situate this story in a proper spatial context, I have highlighted my block here, bounded to the north by Broadway, south by Breckenridge, east by Jackson, and west by Preston. As this block is cross-cut by Jacob and Lambton streets, it sort of forms three, but I will treat them as one. Here is Smoketown from Google Earth's satellite. Here is my block highlighted in red. It's changed a bit since the last Google Earth update, especially this middle part here. Those buildings there are gone, including the Dollar Plus food store that used to stand at the corner of Preston and Lambton. Here is the last vestige of that store, a sign that was recently removed. To observe how this store's closure affected residents, I headed to Smoketown and asked my friend Joe.
Dollar Plus. And I've lived around here about 6 years, but since they closed, I tried 4 or 5 other stores in the neighborhood, and I've got yearly outdated stuff from them that I've thrown away, and it's just becoming too much of a habit. I think I'm going to move to this neighborhood because it's just too hard to get a loaf of bread that's not even, 6 months expired. And just too big of a hassle. I'm out. But since they closed, you can't even get a piece of simple fruit anywhere in this neighborhood. But I did go with my family members to the East End, and anywhere in the East End is all normal prices and good fruit. That's where I do all my shopping at now, but that's still a pretty big commute to have to go 10 miles to get a banana. But
In Smoketown, there is a lack of places to eat for sure, but moreover, there isn't even really a place to get a drink of water. I went for a walk one day, starting at the southeast corner and proceeding in the direction of the arrows, until I ran out of water about here at the X. It was certainly a long and unpleasant walk down to the store at Oak Street. Remember, the one with the green food. I suppose I could have stopped at Indies or Long John Silver's for some water, but I didn't for 2 reasons. 1, I couldn't do that every day if I were a resident here, and 2, I did in fact get a cup of water from Long John Silver's the other day, but something in its tepid taste reminded me of coal dust. a particulate matter with which I am intimately familiar. Joe could tell me about the food situation from a resident's point of view, but there are a number of organizations around my block that were involved in combating the food desert crisis. I started at First Lutheran Church. They told me they didn't really have anything to say, except that they participated in the Dare to Care food pantry program, but they gave me a number to a Betsy Hatfield who was active in the Dare to Care program. I called that number, but it had been disconnected. After Googling in vain for a way to contact Betsy Hatfield, I gave up. I turned to the teachers at Mazik Middle School for information. I initially tried to contact PE teachers via their email listed on Mazik's website, but got no response. The final and most disappointing dead end I ran into in the course of making this documentary was Youth Build. I called and asked if someone would care to inform me of Youth Build's agrarian activities. You can see here their greenhouse and garden. They told me my Win would be the person to talk to, but after 4 or 5 unanswered calls and a voicemail or 2, I gave up. Still, we can see the positive goals of Youth Build. I was particularly interested in the farmers market supposedly held out back at Mazik. I found out about it just by walking around, and then I checked it out online. But I heard from a teacher I managed to contact at Mazik that the farmers market hadn't been open for the past 2 years. When asked why, the teacher told me that the committee governing the market had a few managerial problems. The turnout was not as big as expected, and farmers complained that they could not profit from selling their produce. Customers complained that they didn't know how to prepare the products available at the market, and alas, the market imploded under the weight of its own noble intentions. Perhaps the farmers market may one day reopen. I met at least one prospective customer.
Farmers market open right here in Smoketown, that'd be great. Like I would go there instead of going to Trader Joe's or Rainbow Foods or something like that. And I don't know. I like fresh produce, so yeah, I would definitely go.
Who else was there trying to make a difference in the community? My investigation led me to 2 more helpful sources, Metro United Way and the Franciscan Shelter Kitchen, both on Preston Street. At Metro United Way, a lady named Jan kindly gave me an overview of the organization's efforts in the way of mitigating the food desert crisis. She was familiar with the term food desert and explained the ways Metro United Way sought to help. She said they teamed up with the Dare to Care food pantry program to service at-risk neighborhoods across Louisville. Metro United provides the volunteers and connections, while Dare to Care provides the food, and the organization set off in a joint venture to 8 neighborhoods in Louisville once per month apiece and set up a mobile food pantry. Volunteers hand out juice, bread, produce, and other foods to the food desert residents, many of whom lack access to a car. Another program Metro United Way has involves maintaining emergency service centers in Jefferson and surrounding counties. These centers, 6 of which are in the Louisville area, provide emergency food items, medicines, and sometimes money for rent. Besides Indies and Long John Silver's, there is one more place to eat on my block, the Franciscan Shelter House, open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. I spoke with a volunteer named Chuck about the shelter's program. He told me they were an independent group of mostly volunteers and a few paid employees. The shelter was founded by a Franciscan monk 32 years ago. The first day of operations saw 9 people served meals, but nowadays, Chuck said, the average turnout is about 450 individuals per day. 450 people. That's a number of magnitude. It's a wonderful thing that Youth Build, First Lutheran, Metro United Way, and the Franciscan Shelter House take it upon themselves to care for the destitute and dispossessed. But I couldn't help thinking that their efforts amounted to so many band-aids on a gaping wound of land use, resource allocation, wealth distribution tragedy. And implicit in revitalization is a sense of lost vitality. How do you go about restoring the vitality of a community? Can you isolate single causal factors and solicit help when ameliorating them when the task is beyond your own reach? Who really has the power to end the most egregious human misery, And how do we make them act? Or is that effort futile? Are we on an irreversible one-way course to global warming, individualistic consumer culture, socio-political ethical disaster? Is the appropriate role of the citizen to aspire to attain the towering heights, but not expect them, to have faith that one day intensely concentrated benefits of free enterprise will trickle down to those citizens at the bottom? What difference is there, or should there be, between citizens and consumers? These are many ponderous questions, but I can say, in short, I certainly hope our course is reversible, and we as a society can learn from our mistakes in urban planning and so forth. Citizens are more than mere consumers because they are activated by a civic spiritedness that takes into account the well-being of the public interest. For now, citizens must charge themselves with peering into the black box decision-making process of entities that stand to cause harm to that public interest. Perhaps the day will come when all corporations, by virtue of their possession of large quantities of resources, will aspire to purposes higher than, but still in addition to, the pursuit of profit. There is a kind of decrepit beauty here, an oxymoron for some, but insofar as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it is relative. So, behold. Here is a piece of history, slated for demolition, bound by a 10-feet-high chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. This was a community center. I couldn't get close enough to capture it on camera, but there are murals of civil rights figures, the only one of whom I recognize as Martin Luther King Jr. Stately old building, tall, dark, stained glass windows, bricks and mortar, one last time before the big one. That a community center is being demolished in Smoketown is symbolic. Consumers have no need for community, but citizens do. I have this feeling that if we try, citizens might just be able to cultivate a clean, livable, just, beautiful, equitable, fair, exciting, wondrous, sustainable, vibrant world of human communities living in harmony with the most basic needs of every single human person in a way that bestows appropriate respect for the prodigious complexity of the natural world, that great web of life forms and their environs with whom we share our sacred planet Earth.